over 700 unread books on my shelves, 733 to be exact. And today I decided that I'm going on a book buying ban until I get that number to 0.
This is what I'm talking about, guys. Like 700 unread books on your shelves? Why? Why? You do not need 15 coloring books to color well. You can start with 25 markers instead of 300. Today we're digging into the rise of hobbytok, and more specifically how corners like ColorTok and Booktok have turned hobbies, those peaceful, soul-nurturing activities, into another avenue of overconsumption, and how easily what started as a healthy creative outlet can sometimes, more often than not, spiral into overconsumption. I want to be clear from the beginning, this is not a takedown on hobbies. Hobbies are so important for your mental health, and they have so many benefits. Hobbies are deeply valuable, but like so many other things online, they become aestheticized, monetized, and almost weaponized against our wallets, our sense of enough, and our ability to simply enjoy things without performing it. Before we dive into the hobbytok overconsumption, let's first step back and take a moment to understand why hobbies are so important and the benefit of having hobbies. At their core, hobbies are essential to our well-being. They give us space to breathe and give us a way to escape the everyday demands of our lives. Whether you're painting, gardening, reading, coloring, or even collecting stamps, hobbies are meant to be a break from our busy routines and a space where we can just simply be. They're an escape from stress and work, they're creative expression, and sometimes they can even give us opportunities to connect socially with others, like sharing your passions with others, joining a book club, etc. They also play a major role in mental health and well-being. There's actually a therapeutic practice called art therapy where creative outlets are meant to promote emotional healing. So as you can see, hobbies are really important for just our everyday lives and how we function and how we escape from the everyday stresses and just kind of cope with everything that's going on in the world. All in all, hobbies are important for so many different reasons. But like every good thing, there's always the opportunity for it to go completely wrong, become too much almost, and become more damaging in the long run. We're going to dive into one of the most satisfying corners of the internet, which is ColorTok. And I don't know if you've ever been like me, but I've been sucked into ColorTok more times than I'd like to admit, and almost been convinced to go all out, buy all the coloring books, buy all the markers, and just live my best coloring life. And if you spend any time through TikTok, you've likely come across an array of coloring books and of course, those satisfying unboxing videos that promise the ultimate tool to elevate your creative process. Those alcoholic markers, if you know, you know. And it's beautiful. There's something almost hypnotic about the meticulous organization and the endless color palettes on display. But as with most things on TikTok, what starts as a harmless pursuit of creativity often shifts into a pressure to perform and more dangerously a pressure to consume. There's almost something therapeutic in watching someone color in the lines and not mess up and just blend everything and create something so beautiful. It's almost relaxing to hear the swipe of the markers on the page with the ASMR. And I know we hate on ASMR a little bit too much on my channel. I'm sorry if you enjoy ASMR. In cases like this where it's about coloring and just a hobby, I actually don't mind it. There's something really satisfying and therapeutic about hearing the markers like coloring on a page. I don't know if I'm weird, but I do enjoy that sound, which is why I think I was more drawn in to ColorTok rather than other aspects of ASMR on TikTok. And for those of us who have seen how therapeutic creativity can be, ColorTok almost seemed like a breath of fresh air. But as ColorTok grew in popularity, something else also started to happen. It shifted from creative expression to a way of justifying consumption. It's so easy to get caught in this cycle, especially when you're drawn into something like ColorTok. While the content originally began as a way of creativity and a way to share that with others, it slowly morphed into a more aesthetic, a more curated version of creativity, and it almost became less about the act of coloring and the therapeutic aspect of it, and more about the aesthetic, the setup, the content, which is honestly really disheartening that TikTok or even like Instagram and things like that shifted how great hobbies can be and how amazing they can be for your mental health, and made it more about trying to keep up with everybody else, trying to fit in with the aesthetic, and almost giving you this kind of pressure. Like you might start comparing your coloring style to others. You don't color as well as them. You don't have a full collection of markers like they do. You might have a smaller collection of markers than non-alcoholic ones, while they have a huge collection of a whole bunch of different kinds of markers for everything you could imagine. And you might start justifying purchases that are beyond your means, because I don't know if you've ever tried to look up everything that people are trying to convince you to buy on ColorTok, but they are expensive. So expensive. There's almost like this unspoken message, and I know this might be a little bit, I mean, I know it might be reaching a little bit, but to be a true part of ColorTok and ColorTok culture, that's a tongue twister to say, you have to have the same supplies as everybody else. You need to have the same coloring books as everyone else. And we're going to get into the content and you'll see what I'm talking about. But there's this desire to level up your collection. And before you know it, you're not buying things because they enhance your creativity. You're buying things so then you can fit into the community. Before we get any more into the video today, let's take a moment to thank today's sponsor, Coopert. So one of the hobbies I've really wanted to get into is ColorTok, but as we discussed, ColorTok, it can be really expensive. There's almost this easy way to get into overconsumption, which is not what I'm about on my channel, but a way to get into ColorTok without overconsuming is digital coloring. I actually bought a super cute digital coloring book on Etsy the other day, which I'm saving for when I get my iPad fixed. I'm almost using it as like motivation to actually go to the Apple store to get it fixed, but that's besides the point. So I went to Etsy, I was looking for digital coloring books and I bought this one and it came up and it was super cute. And when I went to checkout, I actually ended up saving more money, even though it wasn't really an expensive item. It was only $2. But while I was in checkout, Coopert popped up, ran a whole bunch of different promo codes and ended up saving me even more money, which is what we're all about on this channel. If you haven't heard of it, Coopert is a free browser extension that automatically finds and applies the best coupon codes when you're shopping online. Instant savings with literally zero effort. Coopert also has a cashback feature, which is amazing if you're not only out to save money, but actually earn some back. Coopert works with over 76,000 retailers, Temu, Macy's, Walmart, Sephora, all the big stores you could think of. So whenever you're shopping, you just click to activate cashback and a portion of the commission comes back to you. It usually shows up in about 15 days, but the more you use it, the faster it comes in. Then you can cash out however you want, PayPal, gift card, your bank account, super easy. So whether you're picking up something small like a digital coloring book or something a little bit bigger, Coopert is there ready to make sure you're not overpaying for your purchases. Click the link in the description to install Coopert for free and stop paying full price in 2025. Thank you again to Coopert for sponsoring today's video. Now we're going to watch some ColorTok videos. So let's get into this. We're going to look at why ColorTok has become an overconsumption problem, and then we'll discuss it.
It's taking literally everything in me to de-influence myself from those markers in those coloring books. I printed some online, like just off of the internet, but like all of my things have streaks on them because I have markers. They're all in a let me flip my camera around. This is the marker setup. This is the organization that everyone needs. They're cheap markers. But like I also have ADHD, and if I buy like expensive nice markers and all these like coloring books, like realistically in a week I'll probably be over it. But I've been really enjoying coloring because it keeps my mind off of things. I have this amazing adult stoner coloring book, love that, but I love these little characters. But I just see the coloring videos on my For You page and they're so much better, and then I get mad, but it's all about the relaxation, and I can do that with my cheap markers. De-influence.
I love the fact that she just at the end de-influenced herself, but also was posting this to de-influence other people from doing the same thing and buying a whole bunch of markers because they're comparing themselves to what they see online, which is what we talked about in the opening of this section. People see what other people doing, their hobbies online, and then compare what they're doing, and it becomes less about relaxing and just getting out of your head. And in fact, you're getting more into your head because you feel like absolute garbage for not having the same quality coloring skills that they do because of these markers, which the markers that they're talking about are the viral markers that all of ColorTok has, which we'll get into, hoo-hoo alcohol markers. I'm probably butchering that name as well. I try to pronounce things properly. I will always fail. Hopefully you guys enjoy that quirk of mine and laugh about it with me. Those markers are viral all over ColorTok, and they're seen as the most important set of markers you can get for coloring because they don't streak, they don't have those marks, etc. They're just perfect. But as you will see down the road, they have their own issues too, and not a lot of people on ColorTok talk about those. So I really like the fact that she said, you know, she wants these markers. She compares herself online, which is sad, to be honest. I feel really bad for her, but she knows that the whole purpose of coloring is to relax and get out of your head and not about comparing yourself to others, and that she can achieve that relaxing state with her cheap markers, as she said. The next two videos we're going to watch are the same clips but different text over top, so let's get into those two.
There's Mummy's mortgage. Oh, there's the food that we could have had this month. In it goes. Oh, There's our holiday to Bermuda going right in the cake.
So I see the point that she's trying to make. Like, when you want to get started in ColorTok, you get convinced or influenced very easily to go all out. As I mentioned, these markers are very expensive. For 24 basic colors on the Ohuhu's website, they're $36. But as you can see, a lot of these ColorTok people have way more than that. So they're spending an abundant amount of money on markers, coloring books, etc. And the point being is that you don't have to be influenced when you start a hobby. You could buy one coloring book and one set of markers, or just use what you have at home. Who even says you have to use markers to color? You could use pencil crayons, which is what I used to color with all the time, and I found them perfectly fine. But ColorTok has convinced people that in order to color, they need to use markers. So even though this is meant to be a fun TikTok, I do see a problem behind it, because it's like what it looks like starting ColorTok. But no, starting ColorTok does not need to look like that. It's what everyone on ColorTok has convinced newbies that they need in order to be a part of the ColorTok community, which is a problem in my opinion, because as we mentioned, hobbies are not supposed to be performative. They're not supposed to be where you compare yourself to others. They're supposed to be a way to get out of your head, not get more into it. The next video is the same clip, just different text over top, and I will have to take the sound out for copyright reasons, but let's watch this. $320 markers. That's a lot of markers, and a lot of the shades are near the same. And I don't want to discredit like artists and be like, you don't need that many markers. Like, I totally get it. I totally get wanting to have the tools available to you, but that's a lot for someone who's just starting ColorTok. If we've referenced her last video, I just think having 320 markers is not feasible for a lot of people, because as we mentioned, like if I'm looking on Amazon, the Ohuhu alcohol markers, the price for 80 of them is $56.99. Canadian dollars anyway. So as we can see, they are not cheap markers. And this collection isn't the worst that I've seen on ColorTok. And again, I don't want to say that your hobby is an issue or whatever. I think if you're spending money on one thing you really love, most people do. They spend an exorbitant amount of money on a hobby, which is totally fine if you can afford to do it. I think the only way it becomes overconsumption is, for one, if you're living beyond your means, spending money you don't have on these things, and two, wasting things. Like the first creator we watched says she has ADHD. She said, give it a week and I'll probably be over it. So those are the two main criteria I have when it comes to overconsumption. The other thing that makes this kind of hobby content wrong to me is when it becomes more about making the content rather than actually doing the hobby, which we'll get into later on too. So I find that these coloring book collections are a little bit unnecessary, and I'll tell you why. Is because it usually takes you a lot of time to get through one coloring book, unless you do multiple pages in a night or whatever. Having this huge collection, you don't need to purchase that right away. I would say maybe purchase like 1 or 2 books to get started. And then when you're done those books, then buy another one. Not only do you have to accommodate for the space for all these coloring books, but then again, it's almost like a different version of Booktok where you're buying a bunch of books, even though you haven't used or read the ones that you already have. And then your TBR gets like hundreds of books later. That's what this is, but coloring version. I would recommend buying a coloring book, using the coloring book or coloring all the pages, and then purchasing another one. The only reason that I could justify showing this huge collection is if most of the books were already fully colored through.
Does anybody else feel like using the Coco Wyo books and like the VV Tainted books, like the quality of the paper just absorbs all the ink of your markers? Like I feel like a lot of my markers have dried out just from using this type of paper. But when I use like good quality paper, like cardstock or like a thick printer paper, it like just sits on the surface and it doesn't absorb all the ink, and like my markers last longer and it's just so much smoother. Like, does anybody else deal with this? Because it's like really annoying and expensive. Like I've had to, like color with Copics, and it's just like I have to get refills and they're so expensive, and it just feels like I'm going through them so quickly. So does anybody else deal with this?
So as we can see from this creator's video, she's clearly in ColorTok, but she also just made the point that the quality of the paper in all of these viral coloring books are not as good as ColorTok makes them seem. They're absorbing all of the ink in her markers, causing her to buy more refills, which in turn is more money that she has to spend on this hobby. So this just proves the point that ColorTok has a very big influence on people who do coloring as a hobby. They all buy the same coloring books, they all buy the same markers, and they're not as good as what ColorTok makes them seem. Yes, it might look nice, but if you watch a lot of these ColorTok videos, you'll see that a lot of them have to put a piece of cardstock or something underneath their page they're coloring because the markers will soak through to the other side and then get on the other coloring page. So there's a lot of things you need to take into account when you are starting ColorTok. Are you doing it to just get in with the aesthetic of ColorTok? Or are you coloring because you actually want to color and get the relaxing benefits of it? Because you can color without getting the markers. You can color without getting the coloring books that everybody else is getting. There are other books, there are other tools that you can have that are not in with a ColorTok niche that work perfectly fine and will do perfectly fine without having to cost you an arm and a leg and maybe a toe. I looked in the comments on this video just because I wanted to see if anyone else was having the same sort of issue. And one person said, my markers literally dried out in less than a month, ... I thought it was just a me issue. Someone else said, I just got my first cocoa book and was surprised how cheap they feel. Another person said, apparently alcohol markers aren't designed for this sort of textile, so they do end up drying up a lot more, unfortunately. The reason why they're drying out is because those markers aren't meant for that paper. There are marker pads made for alcohol markers, but if they made coloring books with that paper, they'd be $30. So as we can see from the comments alone, there are a lot of issues for those cocoa books. They're not as good as ColorTok makes them seem. There's a lot of issues with the markers. They don't work well together. You wouldn't know that unless you found the right person to tell you that, because everyone on ColorTok, apart from this one creator from what I saw, is influencing people to buy the same stuff. I'm not going to play this video just because I want to show you the markers behind the books that she's showing here. She has a huge collection of markers. She also has more markers up on the top shelf, which I'll circle for you. And when people see this, they might even think of her as a professional colorer, because this is a lot of tools and a lot of tools that most people who have coloring as a hobby do not have. At the end of the video shows a clip of her coloring cart, and she has a whole cart dedicated just to holding her collection of coloring books. This is a little bit on the too much side. Again, a lot of people have hobbies that they spend all their money on, etc. But it comes to a point where you have to think to yourself, am I participating in overconsumption? Is this living beyond my means? Is this feasible for me to keep up with? And I think those are all valid questions to ask yourself. You have to make those decisions yourself, but they are important questions to ask. This last video, I'm going to have to mute because of the sound, but it gives a good insight into what a lot of people on ColorTok are doing the coloring for. And in her caption, she says that's not the point, but the fact she made this TikTok is kind of pointing me towards that is the point. So let's just watch this. Okay, so maybe she didn't actually mean like this is the reason why she colors, but if you're spending hours on a coloring page to post it on TikTok and you get upset when you only get 40 views, that should tell you what your intentions are beyond posting the content, which is totally fine. Hobbies should not be performative. They should be a way to escape everyday life and the stresses and not get you more in your head. Like worrying about how many views on TikTok you're gonna get if you post it, that's not healthy. That's not healthy at all. That's actually doing the opposite of what your hobby is supposed to do. And there's no harm in keeping your hobbies private. You don't have to share everything with the world. We've come to a point in society where everything is shared. And I touched on this a little bit in last week's video, but everything is shared. Nothing's private anymore. And it's honestly really, really sad that there's no aspect of privacy at all. Now we're going to get into the last section of today's video, which is Booktok. I know a lot of people get really upset when people talk about Booktok, but I feel like I can offer a unique perspective because I used to be a part of that community. So Booktalkers, don't come after me because I used to be one of you. And I know for a fact what goes on behind the scenes. On the surface, it seems like one of the most wholesome places on the internet, a space where people can get excited about reading, sharing their favorite books, where books are celebrated and stories are shared. What could be wrong with that? Unfortunately, a lot of things. When you peel back the layers, Booktok has quietly turned reading a deeply personal and somewhat affordable hobby. Not really, books are expensive nowadays, but it's become another arena of overconsumption, comparison, and let's be honest, performance. I will give Booktok this one thing. It has undeniably revived interest in reading, especially among younger audiences. Like, reading is a cool thing to do now. We've seen authors like Colleen Hoover, Sarah J. Maas, and Taylor Jenkins Reid skyrocket in popularity because of it. And I have to say, Sarah J. Maas, love her books. I have a quote from A Court of Mist and Fury tattooed on my ribs. So I'm a diehard book fan. I love reading. I'm a fantasy book girly through and through. Another thing Booktok has done has helped small indie book authors blow up and become successful in their careers. Bookstores now have tables dedicated to Booktok favorites, which is awesome. So yes, Booktok has done so much good in the bookish community for authors and readers alike. But somewhere along the way, Booktok became less about the joy of reading and more about the aesthetic of reading. Cozy book corners, huge home libraries, which is every reader's dream. I'm fully aware of that. I wish I had that. A huge part of Booktok content is the monthly wrap-up or the reading goals format. You'll see creators post videos saying they read 10, 15, 25 books in a month. And while that's impressive and sometimes genuine, it also starts to become, if you're not reading a ton, you're not really a true reader. And while some of these creators don't outright say that, the point is reading becomes a race and more of a numbers game. You feel behind because your Goodreads challenge is still in the single digits. You feel like you're failing the hobby because you're not devouring books at the same pace as others. Believe me, I've been there. But let's be honest, reading one meaningful book slowly, thoughtfully, and with reflection can be far more impactful than rushing through a dozen or skimming a lot of books. And yet, Booktok does not always reward that. It rewards volume, hauls, and curated shelves. And that pressure can drain the joy out of reading. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about my Booktok journey. And while this may be just specifically my experience, I'm 100% certain that this could be true for a lot of different Booktok creators. So when I had my Bookstagram and my Booktok community, it was very competitive. A lot of bookish creators joined engagement groups and were, I guess, fabricating the numbers of people who actually enjoy their content. Back then, I had 5,000 followers on Instagram from Freckled and Fantasy, which was my Bookstagram name. And you had to be posting consistently, posting photos, aesthetic photos of books, reels, etc., in order to grow and to stay relevant. Growing on Instagram was really hard. Me personally, I felt a lot of pressure to have better photos than people, to read more books so I could comment on more books and review more books and be an authentic source for people to go to read good books. And unfortunately, it became a very big comparison game because I was comparing myself to other creators. I was comparing how many books I was reading, how many likes I got, how many comments I got, just a whole bunch of comparison all in all. And when I was just a reader not doing Bookstagram, I felt a lot of pressure to also just read a lot of books in general. There's also a lot of pressure to keep up with buying a bunch of books in order to take photos of them. I would go and get the most aesthetic versions of books that were popular at the time, just to take photos of, and my bank account could not handle it. Another thing I noticed in the Booktok community, even now, is how many creators feature the same dozen books, like the same title, but in a whole bunch of different special limited editions. Booktok has made it normal to see someone buying 5 versions of the same book just because of how curated it looks on a shelf or how beautiful it looks on a shelf. Not because they're actually going to read those editions, they're just buying them to put on their shelves.
I have a lot of copies of Fourth Wing. I really like this book.
Absolutely no hate to this creator. We all know that she is famous for her beautiful and super unique library. But is it ever that serious to have that many copies of a singular book? Like, I'm all for a special edition or two, and, you know, I just think we really need to rein it in, because that to me screams peak overconsumption in the Booktok space. I think 1 or 2 copies of one of your favorite reads, cool. Maybe a third if it's a super illustrious edition. But do we need to have a stack that is taller than you? Seems unnecessary to me.
I have to agree. I don't think having a pile of books, the same book in a whole bunch of different special editions, is necessary. And a lot of people fall victim to the special editions because authors and publishing houses, they will release special editions, which are not really that special. To be honest, I've seen a lot that are just kind of mediocre because they want to push book sales.
I'm gonna say it with my chest. Sprayed edges and special editions are going to be going out of style a lot sooner than we think, And honestly, this ACOTAR special edition is going to be what pushes it forward. Now, this isn't me saying I don't love spray edges, because I do. I literally have a whole shelf behind me right here of them. This is just me saying the fact that this once small little niche part of the book community is now become so mass marketed that the appeal is slowly being lost and people are just trying to get a cash grab for them.
A special edition or limited edition or whatever you want to call it can only be two things. It can be a thank you to the audience who made the books famous. This tends to involve artwork that brings the story to life. Or it can be a physical representation of people's love for the story, which tends to also look good on a shelf and appreciates in value. This is neither and is an abomination. This is for nobody, and it is clearly a cash grab.
And a lot of book talkers will fall victim to it because of the reasons I mentioned before. Comparison, trying to keep up, trying to get more likes, trying to grow their platforms. Maybe some of them genuinely want to have the same book in a whole bunch of different editions, like every single special edition that's ever been released. But the vast majority of people can't afford that. Even the book talkers can't afford that. And while, yes, collecting things you love isn't inherently bad, it crosses into dangerous territory when we start to confuse consumption with connection. When owning books becomes more important than reading them, when a pretty edition feels more valuable than the story itself. It's no longer about loving books, it's about looking like you love books. What started as a simple concept, books you want to get to, has turned into an overwhelming mountain of unread titles proudly displayed in many Booktok videos. We're talking 50, 100, sometimes 200 books sitting unread, but the creator is still buying more.
I have over 700 unread books on my shelves, 733 to be exact. And today I decided that I'm going on a book buying ban until I get that number to 0. Okay, like a ban with a teeny tiny exception. I am going to allow myself, because this is going to take me a handful of years, I'm assuming, to get done, I am going to allow myself to purchase one book a month. One book. Normally when I'm not in a reading slump, I normally read between 15 to 20 books a month. So just getting rid of that many off my TBR and only bringing in one, I feel like I can still make good progress. So a book buying ban with a little twist.
A book buying ban with a little twist. I have 700 unread books on my shelves, but I'm going on a book buying ban, but I'm still going to buy books. This is what I'm talking about, guys. Like 700 unread books on your shelves. Why? I get you love books. I get there's books you want to read, but add it to a list on your phone instead of going out and buying the books before you can actually get to read them. There's a point where your TBR pile stops becoming aspirational and starts becoming a reflection of peak overconsumption, a symbol of impulse buying, of trying to keep up, of convincing yourself that buying another book is the same as making time to read. It's the illusion of productivity. You feel like you're investing in a hobby, but really you're just feeding the dopamine hit by buying something new. Hedonic adaptation, I'll link the video where I talk about that a little bit more in depth. The average person simply doesn't have the time